Awesome. Welcome to the Lila Life Show. I am your host, Linda Andrews, and I am so excited to introduce Jenn Trepeck. She is the host of Salad with a Side of Fries, which who doesn't love salad and fries, sometimes more than the other. Welcome to the show, Jenn.
Thanks so much for having me. Yeah, either one in balance, right?
Yeah,
Have them
some
both.
some
Enjoy. Right.
ratio of whenever, wherever. I love it.
Exactly.
And Jenn is a force of nature, which you can feel already, I'm sure, in the wellness space, recognized as one of Podcast Magazine's 40 under 40. We're so pumped to have you here, and nominated for the 2022 International Women's Podcast Award for Visionary Leadership. Amazing. We want to channel all of that here. She is an optimal health coach, podcaster, and business consultant, having gone to University of Michigan, Ross School of Business, founded Better Life Now while working full-time in hedge funds. A little bit of finance there. It can relate to that as well. And over a decade of building her practice as a side hustle, she did make that full-time leap to self-employment. We love that for the listeners that are curious about entrepreneurship and haven't yet made the jump. We're testaments that you can at some point make the jump. And then that's when she launched Salad with the Side of Fries podcast. So we hope after you listen to this episode, you head over there and listen to hers. And her mission is to empower large audiences to achieve optimal health. She helps aspiring wellness warriors break back into the health world and mentors entrepreneurs to get started or level up. Again, we're so pumped to have you.
Thanks so much for having me.
So your little origin story, how did you get to where you are today? The short version or the long version?
Yeah. I mean, you heard it a little bit. So my background is business and marketing. I did business school in undergrad. So I have a BBA, which is basically your MBA in undergrad. Um, moved to New York, started working, and my family was planning like our annual December vacation. And I had to go into the computer system to request the time off. And that's when it hit me that I was requesting for permission to access my own time. And I was like, okay, I don't know what I'm going to do. I just know I will not be working for somebody else for the rest of my life. Right. And my parents worked for themselves as I was growing up. So I saw that. I saw that freedom. I saw those choices.
Mhm.
And then it was so clear that I didn't have that freedom at that stage. Now, having said that, I highly, highly recommend that everybody work for other people. I would say learn on their dime and then use it to build your own. Um, but that was really a pivotal moment. And so from there, I sort of set out looking for things to do outside of my full-time job. Originally, my intention was just to like make some extra money and invest it
Mhm.
and just retire early, live off that investment income, figure that whole thing out. And then everything I thought of to do outside of my full-time job sounded miserable or logistically was never going to work when I had to be in the office at 8 a.m. Like I was a writing tutor when I was at Michigan. And now I'm in New York. I was like, oh, I'll go tutor kids at NYU. And then I was like, no, that sounds awful. Right.
An,
And
an
I don't
hour to
want to,
get there. Yeah.
right. Right. Like I don't want to be up all night because Joe Schmo forgot they had a paper due. And then I still have to be in the office at 8 a.m. So I was looking for things to do in my spare time and sort of worlds collided because while I was looking for things, I was also on my own sort of saga of weight management and wellness and trying to figure all that stuff out.
Mhm.
And um, when I learned about the curriculum that I've based my practice on, at first I was like, no, 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 that's okay. I've got my thing. Right. Like I thought I knew all the things, had all the answers. Meanwhile, I'm living on this crazy roller coaster of like gaining and losing. And, a lot of people can relate, I think.
Mhm.
Um, and then, I continued to learn. Ultimately, I worked with a coach, followed the program, completely changed my life. Like the only thing that allowed me to say I kicked my food issues. And I was like, I feel like this is the nutrition education we're all supposed to know and no one ever taught us. And why isn't this what we learned? Because everybody deserves this information.
Mhm.
And so I was like, okay, this is my thing. This is what I'm going to do outside of my full-time job. to then eventually work for myself. Now, admittedly, when I started this whole process in 2000, well, I started looking for things, I would say it was 2005. I started my health coaching practice in 2007. I did not expect the side hustle life for 12 years. Like, I thought it was going to be much faster than that. And admittedly, there are a lot of reasons for that. But ultimately, 2019, left my full-time job in July, launched Salad with a Side of Fries podcast in August, honestly, because I don't know what to do with free time. Right. And I got into listening to podcasts and I was like, I could do this. And now fast forward, here we are. I get to sit here talking to you, Linda.
No, I love it. And I love the honesty. I think that, the entrepreneurship journey can be so glamorized and it's like from here to here in 90 days. And it's like, no, it could take 12 years. And even
Right.
from 12 years, then it's another 5 years. And then from 5 years, like who knows what the future has in store, but the honesty of the journey and, it would be great to have that bullseye and it all be perfect, but it's often not. How did you know navigating those 12 years that you were on the right path?
It's a great question. And it's so this thought process,
Mhm.
I would go through over and over, sometimes many times in a day, sometimes, monthly or right. And it was always, life would be a lot easier if I didn't have all this extra stuff to do. Right. I would contemplate quitting. I would contemplate giving up.
Mm.
Like, work would get crazy. My business would be on the back burner. And I'd be like, I'm not even doing anything anyway, or,
Mhm.
I'd get all in my head about it and I'd go, okay, I'd mentally play it out. So let's say I stop doing all that stuff. Then what? Well, then I'm choosing this job and these inhuman hours and lifestyle for the rest of my life and working for somebody else for the rest of my life. Well, I'm still not choosing that. So that means that I'm still going to need something else. And if I'm going to need something else anyway, and still or again, what would that be if not this? And why would I get right? And so it's like, it's honestly a merry-go-round and a thought process,
Mhm.
but I would come back to, no, I still want the thing in the end. I still want to be working for myself in the end. If not this, then what? And the beauty of what I have here as a side hustle is that it can sit in my back pocket when I need it to. And it can be at the forefront of things when I have the capacity for it. And so that's part of why it took 12 years, but
Mhm.
that's also why, you know, I keep going or I kept going at the time, you know?
I love this. It's making me laugh because I picked a date on the calendar and I was like, this is, I'm burning my boats. This is the end. I didn't take the 12 years. Like, I was just like, that's the date. I stuck to the date. And then it was years of, what did I do? And it was just the panic, like, right, freeze that. It was like, oh my
Yep.
gosh. And so taking the time to figure it out and that you're still coming back to it and it's still sort of working and I'm still getting better. Like there is no matter what a growth curve. And I relate to that of
Yeah.
it's still going, like there's still something here or else like this wouldn't be going on at all.
Exactly.
And like the
Exactly.
resilience you build in that process.
Right. And to be able to do that mental exercise, I think is so helpful. And
Hmm.
I often see, especially with not just my health coaching clients, but my business coaching clients, like so often people will start to beat themselves up over doing that mental exercise or over how often they're doing that mental exercise. And to that, I say, like, who cares? Right
Hmm.
now, we're just picking at things and we're making things mean something that they don't necessarily have to.
Hmm.
And so, like, let it go. Recognize that it's part of the process. One of my mentors used to say, if you haven't contemplated quitting, you're not doing it right.
And multiple times a day is just bonus points.
Right. Exactly.
It's like one client once, she said, I was like, she's like, I think I need to get a job. And I was like, yeah, like I've put applications out last week. I mean, this is part of it. That's the discovery process that I think sometimes that contrast gives you insight about how bad do I want this? And there are levers that I'd love to hear as you were on your journey of knowing like, oh, this isn't working. I need to turn this on. But when things aren't working and going, things have to change. And so it's all the feedback loop as you were traversing the 12 years where there's certain things that you were turning on as levers that did start to work that you're like, oh, I am getting better at this. Okay, let's do a little bit more of this. What was that like for you?
Yeah, I think one of the big things that I figured out, and this was actually even relatively early on, I figured
Mm-hmm.
out my process from introduction to a potential client
Mm-hmm.
to closing the client. And I could rinse and repeat. That was probably the best thing, right? And my success ratio in closing them
Mm-hmm.
was very high. And so it allowed me to get that traction, to build that confidence that I know what I'm doing,
Mm-hmm.
right? That, okay, so the missing piece, right? If the next thing I need, if I'm great at, initial contact to beginning to work with them as a client,
Mm-hmm.
then what I need to grow is more of those initial contacts,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so then it became a function of like, all right, well, how do I get more of that? Right? Where is that going to come from? And then tweaking with some of those pieces and playing with all of that. Um, but I think the idea that you were saying before was struck me, as far as all these levers that we pull and the things that we do. And there is a time and a place. I'm a big fan of the side hustle, and a lot of other people will disagree,
Mm-hmm.
especially if we're starting and this is a new thing and we already have a full-time job.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that many people who really thrive in desperation. You might think you do, right? You might think that you're like, oh, but I'm a crammer. Like I cram for the test. I work well under pressure. Like, I'm a procrastinator and then I do my best work in the last 12 hours. This is very different than that, right? This is, I may not have a roof over my head if, right? That's a different level. That's not time pressure. That's desperation,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
frankly, I haven't seen anybody function at their best from desperation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that energy is also completely unattractive and like repellent to somebody on the other end of that conversation. So I'm a big fan of the side hustle to start so that we're not operating from desperation.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're getting to that point where you can't think straight, where you're completely like preoccupied with the bill that's unpaid, right? Or the dollar value that's in the bank account and, the spending that whatever it is. I think picking up a job with a plan, right, for a finite period of time
Mm-hmm.
might serve a huge purpose, but that's also very different than saying, I am building this career and this business.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was very clear that my job, even though it came before my business, I was very clear that my job was a job.
Mm-hmm.
While I did well, and there were a lot of people who made a career of it, that wasn't my goal.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's a mental shift of like job versus career, and then how these puzzle pieces fit together.
I love this distinction. And I think that, especially at the early stage, there are so many constraints,
Right.
right? And you're putting yourself in job, which could look like a full-time career with side hustle that's going to have a ton of constraints, including time. And if you can
Right.
get things going in that, where, when you departed the career slash job and now you have your side hustle turning into the business without some of that structure and systems in place, like you said, you don't do well with idle time.
Right.
It's like all of a sudden you got a lot of
Right.
it.
Right. And first of all, I've gotten way better with free time. Um, but that also goes back to, for a lot of people, what do I do myself versus what do I outsource? What am I delegating versus what am I doing? And a lot of times, especially early stage, we're trying to do everything ourselves. And sometimes that's necessary and sometimes it's not. So one of the things that I always ask everybody is assess the resources. Do I have more time than money or more money than time? Right? So when I had my full-time job, I had more money than time. Leave the full-time job, all of a sudden side hustle now needs to provide full-time income. I have more time than money. And so there are different things that I might be doing myself at those different times to make it work. And sometimes those things are business related. Like, you know, these days I outsource a lot of pieces, right? I outsource a lot of outreach for public appearances. I outsource, my social media marketing. I outsource the post-production of my podcast. In the beginning, I did all of that myself because I had the time and not the resource of the dollars to make that happen. So it's a balance, right? When I had my full-time job, I outsourced. Now this I still outsource because it's just not my best, activity, but like cleaning my apartment, right? Like there are other things that we can outsource besides business focused things that allow us to use our time differently.
Buying back
and
the
so
time.
think about exactly. So when I had my full-time job, more money than time, paying somebody to clean my apartment was worth every penny to give me those hours to build my business or have a social life for that matter, right? But it's looking at your own resources and saying, where are they best spent? And recognizing that our time is also one of those resources as much as the dollars are one of those resources.
How do you look at how to make that shift from full-time career / job, side hustle becoming the business, and the priorities that shift in that process?
Yeah, I think part of it was I set myself up for that transition, right? I didn't leave my full-time job without knowing that I had a significant runway because, listen, there are a lot of people.
It's really wild to not do that. Yeah.
Right. But like, there are a lot of people who in a side hustle can end up making enough where by the time they leave their full-time job, it's the same income. Well, if you're used to having double, right? Even if it's the same, it's now half.
Right.
Than what you were used to. So it comes down to sort of recognizing just because all of a sudden I have full-time hours to give doesn't automatically turn it into the full-time revenue that we're used to. And so having enough, money set aside or a plan or whatever it is so that you're not operating from that desperation. So I had about 9 months that I had given myself, right? It was like this 9-month runway to be able to figure it out. And so I didn't have the pressure. I didn't have the panic or, that desperation that we were talking about before. And little did I know the pandemic was going to happen. And that was a whole other, wild, intervention in all of it. But yeah, I think it was just setting myself up so that it didn't feel dramatic in terms of, the money part and the life stuff, right? What felt dramatic was all of a sudden, like, I had a lot of time. And admittedly, I took a couple weeks and I was, I cleaned things. I did things that I felt like I hadn't had time to do in ages, and then I also like reached the end of Netflix, like
This
in
is the end of the
those first few
road.
months.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was like, like when Netflix is like, are you still there? They were
Yeah.
like, you have watched it all. Like
Your algorithm has expired.
right. We have nothing left to recommend to you. Come back
There's
later.
there's something
Right.
about you. Well, you're very interesting, but there's many things that stick out, including that balance of wellness and business. And you are a business professional in the wellness space, but that balance,
Yeah.
and I could see this sometimes where it'd be very much the wellness entrepreneur in the desperation. What's worse than the scent of the desperation is the cover of the desperation, like the
Oh yeah.
pretending, right? I definitely lived that for a while. And I also call it delusion.
Yeah.
I'm on the other side of that.
Yeah.
But that balance of taking care of yourself, being in wellness, and then the business side of things, and making sure that both are humming. And I think sometimes we get into our passion, wellness, and then you can almost neglect so much, and then the
Right.
business isn't going. And how do you help people navigate all of that?
Yeah. I think the first fundamental piece is mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that comes with an eye roll, but the mindset of for entrepreneurs, for solopreneurs, for people in those early stages, we are our business.
Mm-hmm.
If we go down, doors are closed. Right? Now, I'm a big fan of multiple streams of income and leverage and not necessarily tying all your income streams to your time.
Mm-hmm.
But fundamentally, we are our business.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we are not taking care of ourselves, something will eventually suffer. And it's usually both us and our business.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes, like we think of it as a Venn diagram, right? We have our business, we have our family, we have our personal care things, right? I feel like self-care now like requires an eye roll. Like it's sort of
So
lost all
many of the
meaning.
terms, though.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But right, we have all these different things. Maybe there's another job in there, right? We have all these kids, whatever. We have all these different responsibilities and things that we're focused on. And somewhere in the middle of this 80 billion circle Venn diagram is us being pulled in every direction.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And we feel like the 30 minutes we spend going for a walk is taking away from what's happening with our kids or what's happening with our business, right? Or all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
What I encourage everybody to do is instead of thinking of it as this Venn diagram and we're stuck in the middle, pulled every direction, it's all just one circle. So the 30 minutes that we spend going for a walk supports the things that we want to do for our kids and the things that we want to do for our business and the things that we have to do for our job, right? That it all makes everything work.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's like this house of cards. They all have to be there. If we pull one out, the whole thing falls down.
Mm-hmm.
Versus feeling like the house of cards is the center of this Venn diagram. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's really important for us to understand that taking care of ourselves is taking care of our business. It is taking care of our kids. It is taking care of all the things that are, quote unquote, really our priorities.
Mm-hmm.
And that looks like sleep. That looks like fueling yourself. That looks like getting movement in every day.
Mm-hmm. What are you seeing right now people having the most trouble with, broadly speaking?
Sleep and stress.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I did an episode called The Ultimate Biohack, which was all about sleep because everybody is like all worried about, and I do a lot in my practice of supplementation, but everybody is all worried about like, oh, should I be having mushrooms? Should I be microdosing? Should I be, taking NAD? Like all of these things. And it's like, just sleep. Like lack of sleep or poor quality sleep shows up as a whole host of symptoms and diagnoses that if we just slept, the body can do what it's supposed to do. So highly recommend, right? Fundamentally. And
Sleeping
we are the
people.
only species that deprive ourselves of sleep for no good reason. Right. And that's where like I sort of take issue with a lot of the business gurus who are
Mhm.
all like, well, if you haven't run a marathon by 5 a.m., then you are just behind the 8 ball and you are never going to make it. Like, if that's what's required, I'm out. Not just because I'm not a runner, but like, I don't think so. And I'm
Mhm.
proof that that's not the case. And I know a million people who are proof that that is not the case. You know,
Yeah.
yes, morning is important. Morning routines are important, but it's about what's your best morning
Mhm.
versus what all the gurus are telling you needs to be there. So I'm off on a tangent, but I think sleep and managing stress.
Mhm.
And as much as we think, oh, I could get one more thing done on the list, I promise you tomorrow you'll be more productive and get more than just one more thing off the list. If you're willing to be like, I'm going to close the computer and I'm going to go to sleep.
It's so funny. This was very relevant last night. As of last night, I was like getting in the last couple messages and emails, and I have been working really hard to give myself time to visually unwind from the screens before bed to set myself up for better sleep. And I understand the value of sleep, and this still can be this little thing.
Always,
Right. And
always.
it's like ideally, if I could be off screens 2 hours before bed and 2 hours after waking, that would be my dream setup. And sometimes I'm not doing that. And so last night was one of those nights, and I laid in bed just racing in a
Yes.
way that I was like, oh my gosh, this is like, I feel like I'm crawling out of my skin. And I just did this to myself. And it's like the boundaries around, and what I've been witnessing is, like, the work will always be there. There's
Yes.
infinity more to do. And I'm the
Absolutely.
only one to put the phone away and the stuff away and to like
Yep.
start that wind down process. And it's that push pull, but it's like every time I don't do that, the gains are 10 times there. But it's like, let me
Right.
just get that one last thing in. It's like,
I
was it
know.
worth it?
So, right. So I have an alarm on my phone
Mm-hmm.
that goes off every night that says, stop what you're doing and get ready for bed.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a calendar appointment every day in my phone at the same time at night so that at least it alerts me. And even if what I'm doing
Mm-hmm.
is watching TV, at least it breaks that concentration or whatever to be like, yo, should we just go to sleep right now? Probably.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then I downloaded this thing on my computer. I want to say it's called like F Lux or F dot Lux or whatever.
Okay.
You can look for it, but it changes the color of my screen.
Mm.
So you set a wake up time.
Mhm.
And then based on that, it starts to change the color of my screen to more and more like amber tones.
Mhm.
So that if I am on my computer later,
Mhm.
I'm aware of it because what I'm looking at doesn't look the
Oh,
same.
this is different.
But it'll also pop up and say, okay, you're waking up in 8 hours, or whatever.
Oh.
And then I'm like, okay, I really need to wrap this. Or, and then the color of the screen will progressively change,
Mhm.
and it just helps because then if I do end up later, and then closing the screen, it's not like I've been staring at that crazy blue light
Mhm.
as late as, you know.
It'd be
Listen,
funny if
would we all be served by closing the laptop? Yes,
yeah.
but
If they just like downgraded all the way to the black screen.
right, it was like
Like
you are
you're
done.
done.
Right.
And we've landed.
Right.
So your less is more
Yep.
mentality, tell me a little bit about how you apply that with your clients and when they're in that kind of addictive hustle mentality and culture, how you get them into accepting that less is more can work.
Yeah. Um, this is one where it takes a little trust.
Mhm.
Um, and you have to experience it.
Mm.
But the thing that I sort of come back to like explain it is like when our hands are so full, every minute of every day is packed. The next thing shows up, what are you going to do? Right? You have to drop something to
Mhm.
pick that up. So the objective is to make sure that we always have capacity in a way that serves us, right? So that the thing that shows up, we even have the capacity to evaluate if it's something worth us picking up. You know, it's like sort of a weird analogy, but it's coming to my head, so I'm going to say it. My ex and I broke up, and my therapist said to me, I know it feels like the right relationship is further away than it was before, but it's actually closer than it's ever been. Because as long as I was with him and that wasn't the right relationship, there was no space for the right relationship to show up.
The room.
Right.
Yeah.
And mentally or physically.
Right.
Right. And so with him no longer there, well, wait a minute, everything opened up. Right. So it's another way of saying, like, we have to create that space. And especially for entrepreneurs and business owners, that space is often time in our day.
When you were talking about the arm spool, it reminded me of the same feeling of the desperation. It's like there's not room to evaluate, is this a good fit? Is this right? It's just like, I'll take it. You don't even know if you should be taking it, or it passes you by, or something falls. It has a similar energetic to desperation.
And I'll admit, like, this is easier said than done. Right? Because especially, and I'm speaking to all my side hustlers out there, when we are used to working full time and like I worked in finance, they were very demanding jobs. I worked for very demanding people. And we're used to the full-time job. Then we come home and we have a million things to do, right? We never have that time to just breathe or go for a walk. Or we see success and making money. We experience making money as that kind of environment. It is very easy to recreate that in our own stuff because that's what we're used to this looking like. And so I have to catch myself. I have to remind myself that I made up the rules so I can change the rules. Right? Like, I made up the deadline. You know, like, okay. Guaranteed nobody else realizes that my article yesterday published like late in the day compared to in the morning.
Except for the Uber fans, of course.
Right. But like, I made up the rules. I can change the rules. If they're not serving me, they don't have to exist. But we can get stuck in those old habits and those old behaviors that we're used to from these old jobs and end up recreating that toxic environment when it's our own stuff. And so I just caution everybody to recognize our own patterns a little bit and say, wait a minute. And this happens to me. Like, I'll be great for a little while. I'll have time in my day. And then all of a sudden, before I know it, it's like things are frantic. And I'm like, why is my day packed? Like, why is everything
Why would I
back to
do
back?
that?
Right. But it's, it's like it sort of comes and goes and I catch myself. But because there's this old default behavior, it shows up every now and then. And then I have to remind myself, one of the best things I've started, now it's been going on for years. I can't really say started anymore, but that I say in emails is my next availability is. Right? My next availability for this kind of conversation is, whatever. There are certain things that I work on where my next availability for that kind of conversation is 6 months from now. We could put it on the calendar now for then, but that's the next time I'm going to be thinking about that piece.
I love that, including what you are and aren't available for. Like, I'm not available for the chaotic overbooking
Right.
vibe in my business. Like, I'm not available for that. I'm not available for this conversation for 6 months. Like this, you get to make those rules, and that those times of overwhelm give the contrast for the reset.
Right.
Sometimes we need to do our own resets and push our own boundaries a little bit. The patterns come back strong, but I love that what I'm not available for. And like these are your rules. You're making it.
Absolutely.
What's your favorite kind of fries?
I'm a sucker for a really good steak fry. I
Okay.
want a crispy steak fry.
I've been wanting to know that for a while. So I'm glad I finally asked it. I'm like, I just gotta know. They
What's your
have them,
favorite fry?
they have them in New York, the restaurant Almond.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they have one down here. I'm in West Palm area, and they have different flavors of fries. But I like a truffle fry, and I like their
I'm
fries a
picky on a
lot.
truffle fry because a
Yeah,
lot of
sometimes
places,
it can
like,
be so
they
bad.
sometimes so bad, or sometimes it's like, you shouldn't call this a truffle fry. There's no truffle anywhere in this situation, you know?
Yeah, can't find the
Yeah.
truffles. That reminds me of the truffle dealers in the subways. There's a lot of they got the backpacks and they're doing truffles. So tell us a little bit about salad with a side of fries, where the name came from, and what people can find when they find you on your show.
Absolutely. Thank you. So, we had a critic review end of 2023 that described salad with a side of fries as wellness without the weirdness. And so now
Ooh.
that is what I use to describe the show always. It is wellness without the weirdness. Um,
I love that.
I I geek out on the science side
Mm-hmm.
because I believe the difference between knowing what to do and actually doing it is
Mm,
understanding why.
mm,
So I bridge that gap between the science side and the human side
mm-hmm,
in terms of making it practical, but also it is absolutely not eat only things that are green. It
mm-hmm,
is salad with a side of fries. Like, let's be human and enjoy life. And I'm a total foodie. So um, salad with a side of fries is wellness, nutrition, weight management, all the things, but for real life.
yeah.
And where did the name come from? So I think I said in my story, right? I left my full-time job. I knew I wanted to start a podcast. And I ended up hiring someone, again, time or money. I hired someone to teach me how to do it. Cause I was like, I had started doing the internet research and I was like, I could be here till the end of time trying to figure out what mic to buy. Like, this
Mhm,
is insanity, right? So I hired somebody to shorten the learning curve, teach me what to do. He and I were in a meeting and we were brainstorming show titles. And I was considering French fries and cookie dough because those are foods that I will never give up. And he was like, I'm not sold. He's like, it doesn't tell people what they're going to get when they listen. And I was like, okay, you're right. So I was like, all right, we'll keep thinking about it. So we're leaving the meeting and he's like, oh, where are you going next? I was like, oh, I got to go get something to eat. He's like, what are you going to have? And I was like, probably salad with a side of fries. And he was like, hello. And I was like, okay, yeah. And it's funny because my friends were all like, yeah, of course, like you get that all the time. Now I end up eating it all the time because it's a thing, but I've always, been a fan.
I love that. I love that. It's too good. That's funny. And the cookie dough. I was a kid that
Oh,
I
yeah.
would bring cookie dough to sleepovers. Like I'd bring my own
Yes.
cookie dough. Like that
I
committed.
respect. We
Don't
are the
bring.
same person.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'll bring the cookie dough. It's like we got there, they already had it. I'm like, I got extra.
Right. You're like, well, this will just be mine. It's fine.
Yeah,
You guys can all
yeah,
share that.
sure that. So
What flavor cookie dough? And are you brand particular?
I like to eat gluten-free
Okay.
predominantly. That's worked better for me. So I pretty much don't discriminate. I'll try any weird recipe online. My husband is just like, "Oh my gosh, this tastes so weird." I'm like, "Chocolate chips are in it." Like I'm good. So
You're like,
like
it tastes good to me.
yeah, I'm
Fine.
like
I'll
get
take
the
the bowl and a
sugar,
spoon. Go away.
chocolate, yeah. But yeah, the is it Sweet Lauren? I like hers, the
Uh-huh.
pre-mades. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good. But we have a farm down here in Florida that's called Sutton Milk Farms out in Okeechobee. and they have the most insane ice cream. Like picture creamy from the cow ice cream, and then they've taken their own twists on like Ben and Jerry's cookie, what half
Yeah.
baked, etc.
Yep.
So one of theirs is Cookie Monster, and it's the most insane hunks of cookie dough that you've ever had in ice
I'm in.
cream. Yeah,
I
so
also
that
believe that ice cream is only a vehicle for toppings. So that is speaking my language for sure.
yeah, they're the biggest hunks of cookie dough you've ever seen. And I'm always like, I don't know if I should tell people about this, but I have to. It's just too good and that quality is there. So I share with you the foodie, the
That's
foodie.
so good. My dad is also down there in Palm Beach in the winter, so I'm gonna
Okay,
send him
let's
to get some.
yeah,
Yeah.
please, yes, that's there you go. Well, I want to have a moment, Jen, before we do closing thoughts. Just if you could share your favorite ways to work with people. I know you do some business coaching. Obviously, you're well versed in the wellness side. The best way for people to work with you these days.
Absolutely. So it all starts with a complimentary discovery call. Let's have a chat. Let's figure out if we're a vibe, what your best next steps are. And if I'm the right fit for that, awesome. We can talk about what that looks like. If not, I can connect you with somebody or Linda or, but
Yeah,
everything starts with a complimentary discovery call. So I think you have a
I
link.
do. Yeah, we'll have that in
Okay,
the show
perfect.
notes. Yeah,
Yeah.
awesome.
So that'll be in the show notes, or my website is asaladwithasideofries.com. And all social media, I'm at Jenn Trepeck, JennTrepeck. And I will say, like, my favorite thing in the world is hearing from you. So please, like, I will respond. Send a message. I can't wait.
Yeah, including the photo of the salad with the side of fries. I'm sure there's a reshare there or
Yes,
something.
exactly. Exactly.
I love it, Jen. And if you have any closing thoughts, just what's on your heart and mind to leave our listeners with, this is so fun. I could talk to you for hours.
I know, likewise. Um, the thing that I want to leave everybody with is like, you got this. You know way more than you give yourself credit for,
Mhm.
and you already know all the answers. Sometimes we just have to like clear away the fog to be able
Mhm.
to hear them. And side hustles work. However, you're doing it is perfect for you right now. And like everything you want is possible.
Uh, so many gems. Thank you so much. Thank you all for tuning in. This has been another very successful episode of the Lila Life Show. Thanks again, Jen. I appreciate your time, and we will see you next week. And stay tuned. Please like, share, subscribe, and we'll talk to you soon.